All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Operations Committee meeting, January 16th, 3:30. Commissioner Hassan is en route. She has landed on a plane, and she's asked that we kick this off. And since we have Commissioner Berkeley and Commissioner Bondima and Allison Perkins-Cohen's here, we're going to kick off. We are requesting an adjustment in the order of Commissioner Hassan has asked that we do the graduation requirements conversation last. So do we have the student discipline update folk here? Wonderful. So we're going to start with the discipline update, go to use of technology, salaries and schedule, then go to graduation requirements. So please introduce yourself and let's begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Wilson. I'm the Director of Strategy and Compliance in the CAO's office. Just waiting for the PowerPoint to be loaded so everyone can see. So we're updating the administrative regulations that relate to student discipline. In particular, this was triggered because there was a new state law that went into effect July 1st. The law also required MSTE to have regulations in place by May 1st of 2018. So the law went into effect July 17. We'll have regulations from MSTE in May, so there may be additional updates that come after we have that additional guidance from the state. A cross-functional work group was put together and developed a baseline for guidance that we're going to use in order to implement this law. And they reviewed the current processes and regulations and looked at where we needed to adjust things in order to ensure we're in compliance with the new law. The state law basically adds 2 additional requirements before suspension can be considered for a pre-K to 2 student. School administrators are required to develop and monitor interventions prior to suspension and expulsion. So as students find themselves in situations that are deemed as inappropriate behavior, they have to work with the student first before they can even come and ask for a suspension. The student may be suspended for up to 5 school days after those interventions have been put in place, after the school administration, in consultation with a school psychologist or other mental health professional, evaluates the student and determines that there is an imminent threat of serious harm to other students or staff that cannot be reduced or eliminated through any additional interventions or supports. The challenges with this administration is that our regulations define a first day of suspension as a removal from a class setting for longer than 59 minutes. So in order to provide, one of the challenges is that in order to provide the opportunity for this consultation to occur, we have to ensure that we have adjusted the regulations and that time restraint so that the mental health professionals have the appropriate amount of time in order to evaluate the situation. So in order to adjust, in order to meet all of the requirements in the state law and do what's best for students in these situations, we have developed guidance that basically says if there is a mental health professional in the building, then they will be the ones that go through this consultation process. If there is not a mental health professional available, we have a 90-minute dispatch time for that mental health professional to get there and start that evaluation process. The deployment of that staff also needs to be based on how they're funded. So these staff members are on general funds. They're not related to special education dollars in order to comply with those requirements for that funding. The regulations also eliminate in-school suspensions for pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade students.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Is the presentation that you're... Oh, it's printed. It's in here. Okay. Oh, yeah. Hold on. I see the policies on board docs, but I don't see the presentation you're referring to. Okay.
It's the 3rd attachment in board docs.
3rd attachment.
So the presentation is revision to administrative regulations.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you slow down? I can't. I'm having a hard time. I don't know whether your mic's not great. I'm having a hard time hearing you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Is that better?
It's a little better. Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Where is it located? I'm having a difficult time finding it. I know. I got the packet.
No.
It says
JKA.
JKA-RB.
Oh, all of this. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just hold on one sec.
Okay.
Okay. Are you guys all there? Page 5.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Found
you.
it.
Okay. In the process of reviewing these regulations with that cross-functional group, it was also identified that since we're reviewing the regulations, there are other areas that should be updated. In particular, the Office of Special Education identified areas that still referred to exclusion, physical restraint, and seclusion that needed to be updated. The purpose of updating that section of the regulations was to prohibit the use of seclusion in city schools. The rationale for those revisions is that nationally, states are starting to prohibit the use of seclusion. In Maryland, Anne Arundel County, and Prince George's County have already eliminated the use of seclusion. And the training that's available for seclusion is actually aligned to the medical model, which is something that we don't administer in schools. So for all of these reasons, since we were already updating this section of the regulations, they wanted to make it clear that seclusion is prohibited in city schools.
Can you just explain what seclusion is? I'm not completely following.
I have several folks here from special ed that'll answer questions about that.
Okay.
Actually,
How are you on the house?
you have to press the
Sorry. How are you? I'm Lynn House.
Hi.
Seclusion is when a student is removed from the classroom and he is kept away from his peers, and he is prevented from from coming out of where you have him secluded. He is physically prevented from coming out from seclusion. So we are eliminating that policy.
So, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
This is probably simple-minded, so just forgive me. I'm trying to catch up.
Okay, Mayor.
So, a child misbehaves
Mhm.
and is taken out of the classroom for some.
Pre through K. This is just
No, this is school age. Goes all the way through.
Okay.
Okay, so the child's removed from class, and they have to go somewhere.
Right. They can be excluded. They can be taken out of the classroom for up to 60 minutes, 59 minutes. So they can be
Okay.
walked out of the classroom. They can be talked to. They can be worked with. They can be. The key behind exclusion and seclusion is the big difference is seclusion is I take you to a place and I don't let you leave. You may want to leave. I don't let you leave. Exclusion, you walk away from me and I'll let you do that. I may go back and try and catch you and then work with you some more, but I'm not going to prevent you from leaving.
Thank you.
Okay. Re-explain that to me again, the difference between
Okay.
exclusion and seclusion.
Okay, you have a child that's misbehaving.
Okay.
All right, I come to the classroom, I take the child with me, we go to a place where I can debrief and find out what you're doing and how you're doing and de-escalate you. That's exclusion. I'm not preventing you from leaving me. I'm working with you and we're going to work our way back to the classroom. I have 59 minutes to do that. You're not allowed to be out more than, after 59 minutes you go into a suspension. So,
When you say go into suspension, that
because
means you
I'm
go
keeping
to-
you away from your
Suspension
peers.
is when the principal or you say that now the parent has to come and get you or you need to leave the premises.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
I'm there,
Okay.
right there.
All right. Seclusion is, I take you from the classroom, you're having a very hard time, I put you in a place, and I prevent you from leaving that place.
Mm-hmm.
That's seclusion. You want to walk out, I'm not going to let you walk out. You want to run away, I'm not going to let you run away. I am going to prevent you from doing that. That is seclusion.
How are you going to prevent a student in seclusion from leaving that?
I'm going to stand in the doorway. I'm going to restrain you. I am going to prevent you from leaving.
If I may, in many of the hospital settings where seclusion are prevalent, psychiatric facilities, they have what's called a locked door seclusion, where literally a young person or a client or an adult will be placed physically in a room, door closed, locked from the outside, and prevented from leaving.
And we're watching you from the, there's
An
a window.
observation window.
We're watching you.
The law does not specify a door. It specifies physically prevented from leaving.
We're talking about an adult that's going to prevent you from leaving.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you say adult, are you speaking about a police or a teacher?
Teacher,
Or a
teacher,
adult?
administrator,
A staff person.
staff person.
Staff person.
Police function under different regulations.
So you're asking a teacher to put a child in seclusion and prevent them from leaving?
No, we're not asking that
Okay.
anymore. We're
You're not
we're-
asking-
we're-
We're
we're
trying to do away
eliminate
with
that.
practice.
You're getting away with it?
Right, we want to eliminate that practice.
Okay.
So for me, can we just? I'm having, and this might be me just getting caught up to speed. Like, what are we looking to revise here? That's one, right? We're looking to remove seclusion.
And the other piece that we did under the seclusion, exclusion, and restraint was in the old regulation, the school-based, it was school-based for staff development. We've taken that staff development away from the school and brought it back to central office. So central office will control the staff development, what goes out, for those, for our policy on exclusion and restraint. Those were the two big changes.
And
Changes.
And then the second piece of it were the adjustments to the regulations in order to comply with the new state law that put additional requirements prior to a suspension being put in place for pre-K to 2 students. So when we were going through this work with the cross-functional work group, Special Education Office identified this as an additional area in the regulations that needed to be updated. And so while we were doing that process for the pre-K to 2, they identified these additional changes that in the same regulation that needed to be updated.
Okay, so run it through with me. A pre-K. So tell me what's different with pre-K to 2 students. What do we have to do now with a pre-K to 2 student?
So step one, when there are behaviors that need to be addressed, they can't immediately ask for a suspension. They first have to put in place interventions and work with the student. After documenting that and being able to show that they have taken those steps and the behavior continues, they can then contact central office and ask for permission for a suspension of up to 5 days. In order for that to be approved, the school administrator has to consult with a mental health professional, and they're going to have at least a brief meeting with the student, go over what's going on, and they have to determine that there is a threat of imminent harm that cannot be addressed through the interventions.
Gotcha.
At which point they can approve up to a 5-day suspension.
So the key thing is for a pre-K to 2 student to be suspended, a mental health professional needs to be dispatched. They need to kind of have a meeting, and they need to basically sanction that it's okay.
They need to agree with the
Agree.
school administrator that additional interventions
And
would
when
not
I'm not-
mitigate the risk.
When I'm not fully understanding what's required versus what we're putting in is this time limit. You're saying it's a
Okay.
90-minute dispatch.
So we have in our regulations, after the 59 minutes, once you've gone past that mark, it is technically the first day of suspension. In order for us to ensure that the mental health professionals and the school administrators have time to do that analysis, and recognizing the fact that while we have mental health
We don't
professionals,
have one in every school.
not every day.
Right, so
So
we're
we
going to have
have-
to get someone over there.
So we adjusted the regulations to make it clear that in the pre-K to 2 situation where we're seeking that mental health consultation, there's a 90-minute dispatch that they have to meet, not the 59 minutes.
Does that give you enough time?
So
mean-
we had conversations with the offices that have these staff, and they believe that the 90 minutes is something that they can commit to.
Okay. I mean, I don't want any pre-K to 2 student to be in the situation, but there may be, and at the end of the day, we'd want the right evaluation to be done before that's happening, and I know that we don't have a care professional in every school. So, okay, you think 90 minutes we can do?
Yes, the offices that have the mental health professionals that would be dispatched
Okay.
agreed to the 90-minute window.
Question also, when you talk about putting minutes, 59 minutes and 90 minutes, how do you, when so many incidents can be occurring around the city, how do you monitor those exact minutes? Because it would seem to me if we put that in our policy, that's what we're going to do, there's some point we're locking ourselves into a situation where if someone is at another site and cannot get to this other site where they're needed, we're going to go past all those minutes. Are those minutes realistic? And when you say 59, 90 minutes, have you done a trial situation where it works?
So many of our schools do have mental health professionals on site throughout the course of the day. The offices that have kind of additional supports that might be dispatching are located at the Walbrook building right now. And so basically what they did was they took a look at how long would it take them to travel from that location to the farthest schools that we potentially have. And then they added a little bit of extra time in order to address, like, maybe they're in a meeting at that particular moment, they need to, get their stuff together and get out there. So they have considered travel time and that sort of thing. The concern, we want to make the commitment that we are doing what is best for the student and not necessarily what is most convenient for the adults in these situations, which is why we've kind of taken a look at that and tried to put a time frame on it that would be reasonable, but not left it so open-ended that we might have students sitting for very long periods of time waiting for that consultation to occur.
I understand that, and I understand the time. I understand you have to put the time, but I guess because I have 5 people in my family as lawyers, the thing is, when you start talking about putting it in the policy to protect everybody for different reasons, you understand what I mean? If we
Right.
lock ourselves into certain time, I don't know if it would have to be extended or whatever, but not an all-day process. But I was just wondering if locking ourselves into 59 minutes
So the
and 90
59
minutes.
The 59-minute has been in regulations, that's not a change. So that has been, the 59-minute rule, as far as how long a student can be out of class before it's considered the first day of suspension, is not a change. That's already in the regulations.
Okay.
We are adding the exception for the pre-K to 2 students to allow for that 90-minute dispatch time if we're in a situation where an evaluation needs to happen and there's not someone on site.
Okay. Thank you.
59 minutes is in there with Omar.
Any other questions, committee, or? So that's JKA-RB. And, that's administration, regulation. Is there any other pieces you want to bring for us?
No, I believe that's
That's the
it.
main
If there's
change.
any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica and team. Okay, we're going to go to the use of technology. Did I see Mr. Thompson or the technology team here? Okay. Okay, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Should we wait a few minutes for the presentation to come?
Oh, you're just waiting?
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. But when you're ready.
Okay.
introduce yourself.
Yes. My name is Armsby Carbon. I'm the special assistant in the Chief Technology Office downstairs.
I'm Elvis Tia, Director of Infrastructure and Security, IT Department.
Maybe just hold on. Okay, yeah. This PowerPoint's on there. It's also printed out for everybody if they wanted. Okay, it's right here. Let's just hold on one second, make sure everyone has it. You got it? Yep, good. No. Internet safety, acceptable use of policy. Right there. Got it. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Great. So today we'll be presenting on the AUP. It's basically an acceptable use of technology. A little bit of background around this policy. The policy itself has been last revised in 2011. So it's been a while ago in technology years, so to speak. And a little bit of current inclusions in the policy right now it covers the communication systems in the district, cyberbullying, filtering, copyright laws, and some sensitive data in a broad sense. Some of the challenges that we've experienced with the policy and just bringing it up to date to meet current standards is the recent phishing and hacking situations that a lot of districts have been experiencing around the country has led us to really just come back to a 180 and look at this policy and see if we could just do a few upgrades to it. Specifically around the areas of what we consider personally identifiable information, what we're going to term as PII moving forward. So we want to address two main things with this policy. One, how district employees and students and teachers as well go about identifying what PII information is and where it can or cannot be posted in our district communications, as well as around security vulnerabilities, suspicious activity, spam emails. We want to set an expectation as to how employees should interact with those issues if it does come up. So Section 3 of the current policy under the Conduct and Use section, particularly, it does not clarify what PII or personally identifiable information might mean to a district employee. So we definitely want to update that and point out that things like home addresses, telephone numbers, credit or checking accounts, social security numbers, any student information that we don't want placed on a public-facing web portal, we are basically providing a clarity that those things are considered PII. The policy also does not cover posting student information specifically on public-facing websites, social media accounts, or blogs that individuals tend to host in 2018. And it also does not clarify, again, how users should interact with any security vulnerability that they notice, either through our email communication systems on our websites or through the apps, the many district apps that we use on our computer systems. We've actually engaged with a few of the individuals indicated here. There are still some remaining engagements to be had, but we've reached out to the Charter Advisory Board, PCAB, Teaching and Learning Office, the Communications Office, and also a teacher advisory group. We actually presented to them, who was hosted by the Teaching and Learning Office as well. Sure.
This is just something I'm going to just ask up on the slide. I think we have to broaden how we're the community stakeholder engagement here. I mean, there are, number one, other districts that are probably dealing with the same exact issues that we're doing. So what's the best-in-class policies that are out there? There are places like the Council for Great City Schools that potentially could be a resource. We're a member. I think there are privacy organizations that are dealing with privacy that maybe we could learn from some businesses dealing with similar types of information that I'd like to see that we've talked to, and how we can incorporate what they're saying. There's a nonprofit called the Data Quality Campaign that's dealing a lot with this security issues and how to protect a student's privacy issues. So this just seems like a very internal group, and I want to think about how we can get other external stakeholders to give feedback.
So I would agree. Actually, we did reach out to some of our external partners and did do a lot of external research. We could include this on the slide as part of this policy and a follow-up next time we are in front of the board. But yes, we did absolutely do a lot of external engagement. We really just put in internally to BCPS, who we've currently engaged with.
Well, I think that's a really important point. Like, if
Gotcha.
you have, oh, hey, Commissioner Hassan, we're on Internet Safety Use of Technology. Welcome, and I'll turn it back over to you in a second. I think that's really important to put which districts that we've talked to, which organizations specifically that we've talked to, and then what we've gotten from them to actually inform our policy. That would be very helpful to include next time around.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you. So currently, The policy is also accompanied by 2 regulations, one that is applicable to employees and teachers, and the other students. So we're talking about EGDRA and EDGRB. And in the policy, we're not changing any of the underlying regulations because they're clearly defined in terms of what they cover, but we wanted to add at the policy level an amendment to the Conduct and Use section. Currently, the Conduct and Use section reads that the board's technology is to be used for city schools related business in accordance to the 2 regulations, and we're effectively amending that or proposing an amendment to add 2 sub-points or sub-bullets to it. The first I'll just read out for the context of this group. It says that users must respect the privacy of others when using email, chat rooms, blogs, and other forms of electronic communications. Users must not reveal personally identifiable sensitive data such as home address, telephone number, credit or checking account information, and social security number of themselves or district personnel. In addition, school employees must not disclose on the internet or school system, websites, or public pages any PII information concerning students without written permission by the parent or guardian at the eligible institution. The second piece of that is we're also saying that any identifiable phishing scam or security vulnerability on a technology resource in the district must be reported to the district IT service support desk, and users must not demonstrate the problem to other users. Any questions or clarity needed around that? Okay.
Just a really quick question.
Sure.
And thank you, Commissioner Cannon, for starting us out, and everyone. The permission that needs to be received, is that, I'm losing my words, an opt-out or an opt-in?
It's an well, currently...
So do parents have to say, I would like my student not to have to use that, or do we need to get permission annually from every family?
Currently, annually, there is a process. Maybe Laura could help me out with the name of it, but it is an opt-out policy that parents engage with the district, basically saying, I would not want my students' information to be out there. And that's a practice that is currently ongoing in the district at the beginning of every school year. I don't remember the name of it, but it's an opt-out policy. It is the acceptable use policy. Thank you. The second piece, I just want to provide a little bit of clarity. The reason why we're indicating that users must not demonstrate the problem to other users, because currently you may get a phishing email, and one of the first things that you might do is send it to a colleague and ask, hey, did you get this? We're trying to manage that expectation that if users do have any suspicious inclination to any communication, that they report it to the IT desk, so we may be the ones to investigate that matter and not spread these types of vulnerabilities further along the line. The communication plan, where if this is successful in revising this policy, we're going to post to City Schools Insight so that people are aware of it. Potentially included in a leadership action update, and we are reserving the right to have the Chief Technology Officer maybe do an email blast coming from the Technology Office to all employees, indicating them of the update to the policy. Currently, when you do log into a district device, it does have a login splash page where you see a brief description of the terms and condition, terms of use. It will be included in that splash screen for employees to just have an ability to look at it. And finally, it'll be posted on board docs. We did have an engagement, like I said, with the Teaching and Learning Teachers Group, who also indicated some additional ways that we could potentially spread the information of the new policy and the new expectation around phishing attacks and engaging with vulnerable systems. And one of the things that they proposed was including it in some of our training material. So currently the district does have a digital awareness training where as an employee you'll be required to take this training before you could access certain websites like YouTube and so forth. So it'll be nice to have the policy maybe linked to that training. Subsequently to November's phishing attack, we also developed another training in the IT office around email awareness, where we're teaching anyone who takes the course, it's on Blackboard, how to identify suspicious emails and those sort of things. So this is another area that we could include it, the policy related to those use of technology in awareness to the district. Questions?
Is there anything in the plan or in the works, I didn't see it here, about appropriate use of email for non-professional things? My daughter's selling ribbons for something, I'm going to send it to the whole school and ask them to buy it. Or I have a religious message I'd like to send out.
Yes, it actually
or did I
is
miss
here.
that part of it?
It actually is there. So currently the policy here says, oops, I'm sorry. It says the technology is to be used for city schools related businesses in accordance to the following regulations. And in the actual policy, it does lay out.
I didn't see it spelled out a lot more than that, especially things around religious and political sales things.
Okay.
Because those can fill up inboxes really quickly
Gotcha.
and be really uncomfortable for people.
I would take a further look into it, but the assumption from the review that we've had with legal is that if it's not city schools business related, then it's against the policy. But it wouldn't hurt to take a second
To be
look
really
at it.
clear
Yep.
on that. Thank you.
Yep. Sure.
My question is just a comment I hear from schools, and maybe it is in the section of filtering, that you hear we're putting kids on laptops and carts, and we've done a good job in getting access to students. But when I've in schools hearing students saying, I can't get to XYZ website, or I've been blocked out, I'm worried that we're so worried about protection, and which is important, but we are not granting enough access. Are we overdoing it basically in our filtering that's preventing teachers and students getting things are changing rapidly. So how are we dealing with filtering and making sure we have student access?
I'll let Elvis address that.
Yeah, so we got, like Ansby said previously, we have a lot of different kind of training that users should go through. First, I'll speak about the teachers. We got digital awareness that you have to complete before you can access contents that we block, because once you cross that level, then there's a high level of vulnerability, because now the user can access things that can compromise the machine. Now, for the students, we have a lot of restrictions on stuff, and everything that we give access to has to be approved mostly by academics. I know there are some things that schools will want to access and is good for the school, but they don't consider the vulnerability of that very thing. So we consider all of that. We got a level of security appliances that are intelligent enough to do what we call deep packet inspection to actually identify what the resource is. I'll give you a typical scenario. Recently, we had our firewalls to block inappropriate content, but technology has changed, as you said. Now, inappropriate content can't just be video. It can be pictures. Now, how smart is the device to read the picture that the kid is looking at? So in order to work and make sure that they don't have access to those inappropriate contents, we had to put an additional layer of security. Now, the appliances that the school buy, like Chromebooks, Kindle, so each of those things have their own management console that we can use to assist in restricting resources that the students should not have access to. Most times the problem we have is the school will not be in a position, or the school will not prepare enough to use the management aspect to control those devices, and we get there excited to just, if the thing works, the teacher thinks well, but the students can go different places, so we need management. So most times when they say there's a lot of complications, it's not that we don't want to give them the access, but they are not well prepared to have the kind of access they are asking for, because at that time the students or the teachers, they're just concerned about making sure the students can access the content. Another example, a student might want to access Google because they do a lot of research to Google website. But when you go to Google website and then you click images, it takes you over the images, you see other things. So we have to be careful how we present these things to the kids. And the internet it's not like it's just high school, as you know, it's all the way down to kindergarten now. So that's why sometimes it appears that we're trying to complicate the situation, but that's not the case. Right now we have a lot of management council to control Chromebooks, to control Kindle, to control almost every different kind of device that they have.
So I guess it is kind of, I'm sorry. So I hear you. I mean, I have 2 kids in the school system, and I don't want them surfing around seeing inappropriate things. I also know that right now I just judged a National History Day project, and we have students doing incredible research and presenting, and they're going to have to, we want them to give them access during the school day to some material that, that I don't know, that could be questionable, could not be. I mean, conflict and compromise is the name of is the theme this year for the National History Day project. And when you go into some of our movements in conflict and compromise, you're going to see some things that could be interpreted as disturbing or could be interpreted as our history, our nation's history, that our kids need to have access to. So anyway. And when I just worried that we're being overly restrictive. And I don't know the balance, and I don't know the answers.
And it is a tough balance, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Is there an expedient way that a teacher could call IT and say, can I get access to this website and have it?
Yeah.
And that's exactly where I was about to go.
Thank you.
We have streamlined that process over the last couple of years. It's no longer put in a ticket, wait a few days and get access. We have streamlined that process, whereas it's emailed to IT or to academic, and academic is our approval. After they review the website, if it's approved, we open it up. It's a few minutes that happens. So the process has been streamlined, and it is a tough balance. Again, this is work in progress, and the bad guys are really smart. They changed those IP addresses, they changed those domain names, whitehouse.gov, whitehouse.com, and it is our job to make sure that our students and our faculty are protected at all times. So we have streamlined the process, and we truly believe that I know it has been working very efficiently over the last couple of years. So it's not time-consuming. It's to academics, approve it, approve, not approve, we give them access.
Is it happening a lot? Do we have any data?
I have not received a request for access to a website, and I can honestly say in the last 3-4 months. So I think because we just implemented a new filter, and as you roll it in, all these sites are opening up. I have not received a request in a while to open up any websites.
And not only are the websites really smart, our students are really smart.
Oh,
too.
yes, indeed.
And so
yes,
they can
indeed.
find, they know all the
Yes,
back
indeed.
through
And
hacks
they
to
figure out
see all
ways
the
to
pretty
run
pictures too.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and just to add one more thing is that the reason why sometimes they see it as we're trying to stop it is the school will go ahead and purchase these things, pay for some books online before informing us or academics. So they bring it and they put that on the network, and then it's blocked. And then they contact us and say, can you open this? And then we say, you have to contact academics first to get approval. So that's when it looks like there's a lot of red tapes. Because most times if they tell us first, we evaluate the thing, and then we contact academics and say, is this good enough? It's good enough for us, but we need you guys to approve of it. And if they approve of it, and then we open it up, then they don't have that problem. So that's what usually happens.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second one. We skipped.
Okay. So GBCA, salaries and salary schedule. We did JKA, or we skipped JKA?
No, we did.
We did already?
Yeah. Was that quick? No, you can go back. Oh, well, we asked. We spent a half hour on it.
We are doing policy GBCA, salaries and salary schedules. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Grant Skinner, the Chief Human Capital Officer. Policy GBCA is a conversion of 3 existing board rules. So a conversion and combination. So the purpose of this policy is to ensure that the board meets its responsibilities for compensating employees, including both those employees who are affiliated with a union and therefore have their compensation terms outlined in a negotiated agreement, and employees who are unaffiliated. A few highlights of the proposed board policy. It would include a requirement for the CEO or CEO's designee to present a salary recommendation each year to the board for unaffiliated employees. And also incorporates a requirement for the Office of Human Capital to develop a process for recommending compensation levels for those employees. With that, it specifically states that the board's approval of compensation schedules for affiliated employees is done through the board's approval of negotiated collective bargaining agreements. It incorporates some language in the policy from the prior policy stating the reasons that an employee's salary could be changed, including a change in assignment, including disciplinary action, or including budgetary reasons.
We have a question from Commissioner Bodima.
Thanks. I think that you know the way I operate. I want to stop you at some point because, and I don't know if anybody's listening, talk to me and just real quick say unaffiliated employees, because I don't want to go any further without understanding that, then I'm on track.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you so much.
The vast majority of employees in city schools are affiliated with one of our union partners. However, there is a small percentage of employees who are not affiliated with the union, and under Maryland law, the reason for us to have a group of unaffiliated employees is they are either in significant positions of management or positions where they would have access to information about the boards and the district's bargaining position as it relates to one or more of those unions.
Jeremy, wouldn't like contractual paraprofessionals also be considered unaffiliated?
Anyone who is not a someone who is contractual, who is not an actual employee of the district, is not affiliated.
Not affiliated or unaffiliated?
It is unaffiliated.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry, my response to Commissioner Bandima, I think, was too narrow, that it focused only on people who are actually full-time or part-time employees of the district. Your question expands beyond that. We also have some employees who work with us on a contractual basis and therefore are also not affiliated.
And the reason that I pull that question, as long as we're on unaffiliated, is a question about actually how your office is looking at this. In going, especially to our separate day schools where we have a lot of contractual paraprofessionals, are you doing any sort of cost analysis of what it would be long-term fiscal benefit to the district of having those employees be ours, so that when we train them, we retain them, we build the capacity, we build the culture, as opposed to unaffiliated, which we may get at a cheaper or less expensive rate today per hour because they're not affiliated with a bargaining unit, but we're also not that investing in human capital. Are you looking at that at all? Or?
It is not something that we are actively right now looking at, but is certainly something that we could look further into.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
From my experience as an administrator at a college, it's very difficult to transition those people into positions that's permanent positions, because you have to look at benefits, and there's a lot that's involved in it. And generally, they that's why they're not considered to be full-time employees, because of the costs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Am I right or wrong?
I mean, I think if there are some situations where we have contractual employees serving in very part-time positions, so they're for a very small amount of time, and in that case, certainly it would be one of our considerations of what the cost of benefits would be. But when we have employees who are in higher percentage part-time positions, they already become eligible for benefits, so that is not the reason that we would have someone work as a contractor rather than a part-time employee. Ready? Okay. with respect to the regulations, so they also speak to the Office of Human Capital's responsibility to set salary rates in accordance with the negotiated agreements and the salary scales within. Then the regulations also indicate that the Office of Human Capital has some responsibilities for responding to requests from employees for reviews of their salaries or explanations of their salaries. Responsibility for ensuring that we place new employees upon their hire according to the negotiated agreements, and then create more comprehensive guidance for unaffiliated employees for the full compensation package that is offered to them beyond salaries. One of the next steps that really is demanded or called for by the proposed policy is the completion in a couple of months of a market study for unaffiliated employees. So these are employees in the district who are all being paid at the same rates they were paid 6 years ago. So there have not been any increases to unaffiliated employee salaries during that time. And in order to determine how to adjust these salaries, if at all, we believe we need to complete a market study to get a better sense of where these positions now fall in comparison to our competitors. So with that, I will answer other questions that you may have.
Commissioner Cannon?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's driving the revision here, Jeremy? Is this because we are worried that we are losing a competitive edge with other districts in hiring kind of management talent? Is that something that's driving this?
Yes, so specifically for unaffiliated employees,
Yep.
What you see here is driven by that exact worry that
Yep.
With 6 years of inaction in the district to either increase or determine whether an increase is warranted for these positions, we may be losing great talent to other districts or other private industries due to that inaction.
Yeah, no, I know how competitive it is to find top talent for these specialized positions, and so I want to make sure that we're on the, on the cutting edge. So I'm okay. That's what I just wanted to know what was driving the revision. Thanks.
My question is, this one comes from, we don't get to sit with you very often. And as the policy committee, sort of monitoring and shepherding the policy development to guide the board in directing Dr. Santelises, sort of a philosophical piece. When we look at salaries and compensation, do you know the last time that there was an audit done to those salaries based on, as it says in the policy, that contracts can be negotiated based on need or expertise, things like that. An audit done on equity related to gender, ethnicity, content area, sort of department to make sure if you're in academics, if you're in IT, you're doing sort of the same work, the sort of level, rigor of work, that they're commiserate. Has that happened recently, or?
A comprehensive review, like you just described, has not been done recently. There was a prior market study completed, and it focused on a couple of our departments that particularly were dealing with the challenge that Commissioner Canham shared about the ability to maintain competitiveness. So our IT department, who you had just heard from, was a part of that prior market study, which did result in some changes to the salaries for employees in that division. When you ask about things like equity across gender and ethnicity and other demographics, that was not a part of that prior study, but it is a part of the market study that I described that we will be doing over the next couple of months.
Okay, fabulous. And then the other question that I have is that it states in the policy that a salary may be changed if a placement is changed. So you were a principal and now you're going to be a teacher or something like that. Does that salary change happen immediately, or is there a grace period for the employee to sort of readjust, especially if it's a decrease?
So some of our collective bargaining agreements specify something like a grace period, as you put it. So, for example, our administrator's collective bargaining agreement states that if you are placed into a position under certain circumstances that would result in a salary reduction, there's some time period before that takes effect. And I think there are some examples of that. It is possible that in some circumstances, if you take a job, so you choose to take a job that is of a lower rank and lower salary or wage, that you could see the impact immediately. So if I choose to become a paraprofessional instead of a teacher.
So that may be one of the places where it's implied in the entire policy that it all adheres to collective bargaining agreements, but that might be a specific one where that might need to be highlighted and just say, reductions will be aligned with collective bargaining agreements.
Okay.
I could just see where without it there, it could be a little fuzzier. And that's all I have on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Graduation requirements. Yes, thanks. I pulled it up too. Oh, appreciate it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Laura Jones. I'm the manager for the Office of Teaching and Learning.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Sappy. I'm the Director of Mathematics.
And we are here to share the Academic Office recommendation pertaining to Algebra 2 as a district graduation requirement. And before we jump into the presentation, I do want to note for the audience and the viewing public that there is also a memo that is sort of a companion document to the PowerPoint presentation. It just goes a little bit deeper in detail into some of the things we'll be discussing.
Can I get a foundational clarification as well? Is this proposal that the Algebra 2 graduation requirement will have its own standalone policy?
No.
Okay.
Great question.
We're just looking at it as the one chunk.
Yep, that's actually the perfect segue into slide 2. So just a little bit of context, and then I'm going to jump in and answer that question. So in 2011, the district updated our promotion and retention policies to include that all city school students have to earn 4 mathematics credits, and of those 4 credits, one of them must be Algebra 2. This update was made in 2011 in part to ensure that students graduating from city schools align to the University of Maryland system requirements for entry. In 2013, the state of Maryland passed the College and Career Readiness and College Completion Act of 2013, which is most commonly referred to as SB 740. And that law included a requirement that all students in the state of Maryland must be enrolled in a mathematics course for 4 years of high school. Another requirement of that law, which went into effect in 2016, is that all students who do not demonstrate college readiness by the end of their 11th grade year must take a transition course in mathematics and/or English language arts, depending on which of those areas they weren't able to demonstrate that for. We are here today because we made some changes and updates to the district's promotion and retention policies last spring. And during that conversation with the board, the question arose as to whether or not Algebra 2 should continue to be a district graduation requirement. At the time, we thought it was premature to make a sort of an immediate recommendation there, so we agreed to kind of go back and do some research and bring to you a recommendation based on that research as to whether or not we should propose a change. So this isn't suggesting that we add another policy, we're just making the recommendation as to whether we should adjust current policy regarding Algebra 2. So here you see, I just want to make the note that the state of Maryland requires 21 credits for graduation. Most of those credits are exactly what the city school system requires for our graduation as well, with one caveat, and that is we do require that the Algebra 2 credit is earned by our students. The state of Maryland, again, they require that students are enrolled in math for 4 years of high school, and they require that students earn Algebra 1 and Geometry credit, and that students earn a total of 3 credits, but they do not specifically require that Algebra 2 is earned, and they also do not require that 4 credits are earned. So that's an area where we go above and beyond the state's requirement.
So deviating a little bit from algebra, can you explain on this slide why there's 2 line items for tech ed?
Sure. So the first item that's right below social studies is the sort of general education tech credit, so the semester-long technology course. The other line item would be if a student completes like a CTE program, completes the entire program, that is a way that they can, basically that can be interchangeable with the world language requirement. So if a student is a CTE completer, they could technically opt out of the 2 credit world language requirement. That's something that it's permittable via COMAR. It's not something that we recommend that our schools do. All of our CTE schools do also still have world language courses that they expect their students to participate in, but it is an option. And that's done in part because with the CTE, if you're a CTE completer, you have a very tight academic schedule, particularly beginning in 10th grade, so it's a way to make the schedule a little more flexible for students.
And then when we move to the next piece, we really want to think about looking at both sides. So like, should we make the decision to support and remove Algebra 2 or support of keeping Algebra 2? So after having a focus group with principals and collaboration with teachers and the research that we did, we sort of divided it into those 2 groups. So if you look at the options for removing Algebra 2, the first one is really getting into like students making choices during their 3rd and 4th year of high school that are going to really be the foundation of what they're doing when they graduate. So really giving them the courses they need that they're going to need when they graduate high school, whether it's college or career. And then getting into the other one around removing Algebra 2 would be, if we remove Algebra 2, it allows students to really make choice in the courses they're taking in high school based off their personal and career interests as they move forward. And then if we think about it in support of keeping Algebra 2, and we think about the feedback we receive from principals and teachers in our findings, the first one really gets into that research to indicate students that are completing Algebra 2 are more prepared for college, are more prepared for the SAT, AccuPlacer, a lot of different things that sometimes students as a freshman or sophomore maybe wouldn't necessarily know, but as they're graduating high school, they decide they want to go to college, they would need that course. And again, Algebra 2 for admission to all 4-year colleges in Maryland. In order to be admitted into a 4-year college in Maryland, you have to have an Algebra 2 credit. We also think about students that maybe would opt to taking a less rigorous pathway instead of taking Algebra 2, and then how does that actually affect them when they hit their junior, senior year and they start making changes and think about, well, now I want to go to a 4-year college, and if they don't take Algebra 2, then what's going to be the repercussions of that? And we also look a lot of looking at making informed decisions about our careers when we are in our freshman and sophomore class, because that's really when that decision would have to be made before we would move into our junior and senior year, when the Algebra 2 is when students are taking that course.
So in the research, one of the biggest pieces that comes up on the why not to require Algebra 2 is that there is a fairly consistent correlational relationship between failure of Algebra 2 and dropping out. So do we have any data on retention rates of students who have had to repeat Algebra 2 or students that drop out during that semester?
So we don't have the retention rate, but what we do have is the average pass and fail rate for Algebra 2 as the years go on. So if you look at the next slide, you can see here that when we are comparing our Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 pass and fail rates, they're within 2% percentage points of one another. So we feel like it's very similar from the fail rate for Algebra 1 to Algebra 2, but we don't have the retention rate based off the Algebra 2 data.
Okay, thank you. It helped me here. I'm not the K through 12. I'm going to be the one that's going to help you when they leave that. And my greatest concern, and I don't know what percentage of students now that take Algebra 2 before they leave high school, but my greatest concern, and I shared this when I first came here, is that when those students leave here, when they leave and graduate out of the 12th grade, and they make a decision to go on to a 4-year, 2-year, whichever. And I would say about 85% of the students that check into a community college, mainly because of community college, because they do poorly on SAT. But when they get to a community college, there's a problem. And one of the problems that we have that we need to keep on talking about is when legislatures are talk about this, and they have great concern that they're spending money on students in K through 12 or in high school for as far as math is concerned, math and reading. And then they turn around, and when they go to a 2-year or 4-year, whatever, then they're doing the same thing. And parents need to understand this, and they need to be greatly concerned with students, the math that they take in high school, to help them prepare. Because let me just say this before you say anything. As a dean and vice president at a community college, and work with these students that come out and graduate, I see it all the time. They could graduate out of the 12th grade. By the time they get to the college level, they spend 3 years in developmental education, and then they use up all their financial aid. So we need to look at the whole picture. We need to and have a big old conference and discussion about this, because it sounds wonderful to say that they can opt out to do it and not to take it, but the big deal is that what happens when they do not take Algebra 2. Okay.
Well, I really appreciate that. This slide is pretty it's unbelievable to me. Like, it is saying
But it's
that,
also not 100% of our students that are represented by this. It's 100% of the students who took Algebra 2.
So as a
Right.
graduation
But it's a
requirement
graduation
right now,
requirement.
you have to take
you
algebra.
have to take graduation. You have to take it. So you're right.
Certificate.
Right. So we're getting, our graduation rate is what, again, in the city overall? 65%, 68%. Let's just use a number, 65%. We're saying 65% of the kids all are taking Algebra 2, and they're passing it. 70, and when I saw this slide, I was blown away, because based on what Commissioner Bondima said, we know how many are struggling when it comes to SAT and the scores on the SAT, and how the completion rate, the remediation rate in community colleges. How are we passing like 78% of our students? So my thing is, I really appreciated this memo that you wrote. It was very helpful for me to see both sides. And the reason why. We worry about equity. We want to offer to all. We want to expect rigor. We want it. It is a University of Maryland requirement, so we should have it. It'll help you if you do better in SAT and AccuPlacer. That'll set our kids up for success. So you know what? Because I'm the one who really, one of the board members that brought this up. So I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense as a goal, right then, and the reason why we should keep it in, because it's an additional requirement we're asking our kids to do. But then we've got to be able to, I just don't believe these numbers. We're just passing kids through without asking them to actually demonstrate their knowledge appropriately. Because if we look at SAT and we look at how they're doing in community college, and that's not okay.
Commissioner Bondima?
Let me just say this, because I've worked in 30, 40 years in this, and this is really, what you just said really upset me. I don't have any problems with us requiring that the students take Algebra 2, as long as we're showing evidence that we're giving programs to assist them in passing that grade. Because we can require, and University of Maryland can do all that, require that they take Algebra 2, and they could just, we don't know what happens after that. We do know what happens after they graduate. Huh?
Yeah, you're right. We are requiring it.
Yeah, we're requiring it, but what are we doing to help them get through it, to graduate, to pass, and to be successful with that? With taking Algebra 2, because the evidence is there that when they leave, when they graduate, they end up not being able to even take a college level math.
Well, in many times they're retaking Algebra 1 and geometry as well.
When they go to take the AccuPlacer, they are having problems with that. And then we spend 2 and 3 years getting through, and the sadness of it is that because of the stress and the frustration of trying to get through that, they end up dropping out and we end up spending money, or they end up using up their financial aid because, and they can't go any further.
It just to jump in, Commissioner Bondima, it just has a false sense of security that they understand this material and they're moving through. When you look at this, we have close to 80% pass rate across the board, and yet when you look at our PARC scores, which is Algebra 1, at levels 3 and 4, it's way below. We have to do a complete recalibration for the rigor of what we expect our students and how. I don't want teachers to just be not passing students. What Commissioner Bondima is saying, what I'm saying is like we need intensive remediation or support for our students to actually, so when we see these numbers, we believe them. Because right now, I don't believe them.
Right. One thing we're really focusing in on this year with the new ANET assessments and alongside the new curriculum for high school is really focusing on those grade level standards and then how are we scaffolding with previous grades. So students are really focusing in on that grade level content and then scaffolding in the prior grade standards. And the curriculum really is aligned that way. And then having the data from ANET is really supporting teachers along the way with the resources that are embedded in there. And alongside, I know I talked about the acceleration documents that we're creating at one of the other board meetings, that all these pieces, because we know that, and instead of looking at remediation, of really accelerating these students so that they're getting exposure to this content, and we're trying to fill the gaps of the content that they need to be successful in Algebra 2, because we know we can't fix all skill gaps that maybe a student had from kindergarten up to like 11th and 12th grade. So it is a struggle, and it's something that, we know we need to work on.
The other body of research around Algebra 2, besides the correlation with dropout rates, though, is for our University of Maryland requirement is there, and that's a reality, but the actual need and value of Algebra 2 in a professional life is up for pretty critical debate. Accountants, programmers pretty universally say, I could have done my job without Algebra 2 ever, but I couldn't have done my job without financial literacy. And so there may be some ways we really actually should be looking at mathematics instruction as an optional. If you want to choose, if you know you are going on a 4-year path to college or a 2-year path, then yes, we're going to counsel you in your advising and your master schedule writing to take Algebra 2. But if that's not your goal, there's some real important information that students need that could be gotten through a financial literacy course that could also reinforce their fundamental math skills to help minimize some of the need for remediation should they change their mind and decide to do a 4-year or 2-year pathway. And especially when you think that this is, in 16-17, roughly 80% of only 65% that graduate that pass.
Right.
If we could do this switch and get to a graduation rate of 75 or 80%, even if we went down to 75% success in Algebra 2, we're still getting a lot more students to be where they are ready to have the credential of a high school diploma to consider a 2 or 4-year or a career with that foundation. Commissioner Canham.
Those are all great points. My question is, how many of the students that don't, it builds on Commissioner Hassan's kind of point, how many of the students who don't graduate is Algebra 2 one of the reasons why? Can we do that analysis? So we have 35% of our kids who don't graduate high school. Let's just say 65%, 35% don't. Do we know do we have some analysis around?
We haven't been able to kind of cut that up in a way where we can draw a meaningful conclusion. We can continue to work with the Achievement and Accountability Office to try to look at that differently. One thing that I do know is that there is a significant drop around the 9th grade year where students are dropping out and they haven't gotten to the Algebra 2 course yet.
So it's not necessarily Algebra 2. They haven't gotten to Algebra 2 yet. The 9th
Correct.
to 10th grade drop, which is probably the biggest drop we see,
Yes.
is prior to them being exposed to Algebra 2.
Yep,
So
and even
it's
entering 9th grade, I know that there's a
those are
drop
two
as
big
well.
drops.
Another place to help sort of gather that data may actually be the re-engagement center and talking to kids who are coming back about what their barriers are and their perception and understanding of Algebra 2. Commissioner Bodima.
I'm going to take a leap here. And because I need to say this because we keep debating and having a discussion about algebra and dropout. There's a lot of, the Gates Foundation has a lot of information. There's many foundations and workshops and funding all over the country related to answering these questions. We need to spend some time sending out people to listen and see what is exactly going on with this math. We need to do that, and we need to stop talking about, I don't know, I can't get, it is there, the information and research is out there. We need to not be behind everybody else and step out there and say, this is what's happening, what are we going to do about it? Because everybody's talking about the money that we're spending in K through 12 to get these kids through to graduate and the reasons why. The information is there. It's no question. It's obvious that we aren't getting information to the people who are working on it in K through 12. Because when these kids leave here, it is true, or even when they get into the 9th grade is when we lose so many of our students, has a lot to do with the math. We need to stop pussyfooting around and say what it is. And when they and do something about it. We need to form a committee or something, and I'm saying this, everybody else is doing it. We need to drop whatever and get into it and just do something about it, because that's the only way we're going to change. We can chit-chat and talk about it, but the bottom line is that there's research out there saying why these kids are graduating. They're graduating, some of them, and going to a 4-year, 2-year college and failing. Yeah. They're just dropping out, and it's all there. And let me say this, community colleges are doing an excellent job working with these developmental students. So we need to go to them and LKS and Gates Foundation and find out what is it that we can do for our students. And I want to put that out there. What I would like to see everybody do is come back to us to the policy committee or teaching and learning, whichever, and say this is what we have investigated and this is what we know and this is what we need to do and this is these are the resources that we need to make this happen. Okay.
And I would say if we move forward with that, another group to hear from is the math teachers. I reached out to math teachers in other districts who all were like, yeah, no, Algebra 2 not necessary, and, other than to get into a University of Maryland system. But what do our teachers who are here with our kids, what are they thinking and feeling?
So I did speak to quite a few of the Algebra 2 teachers, and their concern if we get rid of the policy is that students will no longer be motivated to take Algebra 2, and it's going to hinder them when they graduate. Because then when they graduate and they realize that there's barriers and now they can't do what maybe they aspire to do, maybe that changes, that they won't have that option.
And then that maybe just another aspect of educating children about how to prepare, or young people how to prepare for their future. Commissioner Canham, you
I really appreciate this conversation because I know there's no easy answers, and I know you guys are working, around the clock to try to figure this out. And I think we as a board got to take responsibility here. Like we know how small the pot is of dollars that is available, right? But like what Commissioner Bondima is saying, like we need to, and as we think about going into the next budget cycle, which is coming up, like that's a question that we need to ask ourselves. How are we, what the word you use is accelerating math instruction for our students? Like what is the plan? What is the strategy? How are we resourcing it with what we have? Because I think we have to do it differently, but we have to understand that. And I'll make sure that I bring that to teaching and learning and share this conversation with Commissioner Chinia, because that's where we've got to see that in the budget. We have to understand how this is going to happen and understand that it's a short little pot. But I just that's where I think we can weigh in and figure out where this live. So coming back to us and understanding like what you need, what resources you need to help make those numbers, to me, real is going to be really important.
Right, and I do really appreciate that. And one thing, just thinking as, you know, you're talking and going back and forth about some of this, is thinking about different things that are changing as we're moving and thinking about budget time. And the state has a requirement for bridge. So in the past, the Algebra 1 bridge, students took algebra typically in 9th grade around the HSA, and they took the bridge course if they weren't successful on the HSA their senior year. So we did a lot of remediation. We gave them, we used to call it a mastery course. And then their senior year, they would do these bridge projects if they weren't successful. But it was after really Algebra 2. So we weren't hitting them prior to the course. So now with the new bridge expectations, once the students take Algebra 1 and are not successful, they're going to do bridge, and we are creating an actual course for bridge during their sophomore year that would be alongside geometry that's going to build those skills that they're missing around that linear and that quadratic and exponential mathematics to bridge them into Algebra 2. So there will be another component, and then that will also get them the bridge projects. If you remember the algebra bridge projects from before, they're a little bit different now, but it's really geared straight to the content that a student needs to be ready for Algebra 2. So that's going to be that pathway that we haven't done in the past. So there is that bridge that's going to help them get between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. But as we're listening, it's really, we have to figure this out before high school. Like, these gaps, by the time they get to high school, I mean, we're too late. We got to figure out how to make sure that these students have this content and are successful with the mathematics and mastering these standards when they're in elementary and middle school. So in high school, they're actually applying all this and making sense of the mathematics.
That was really helpful. And I think you answered some of my question, but yeah, I mean, just listening to what you just said, we're trying to figure out. So you're saying they're coming into high school not ready, and that's why they're not leaving high school ready, because they're coming in not ready. So it's a teaching and learning issue, I guess, and we have to go back and say what are we doing to prepare them, and why is that not working? So yeah.
I think it also comes to the level of literacy capacity that students need to have, the level of life experience capacity, which brings me to the question related to the bridge program. In taken concurrently with geometry, seems to me to be, and while I know it's an emergency and we need to fix it quick, seems a deficit approach. You failed algebra, so now we're going to have you take 2 math classes next semester. We're going to give you no joy in your life, nothing to provide mathematical meaning or number permanency or any of the other concepts kids need. Seems like we do a lot of fear-based decision-making. Oh my God, they failed. Let's make them do it twice as long, twice as hard. And I think we're losing kids with that approach. So I just would love to hear thought around how we could look at that and say how we could build on successes, minimize failures, and still keep the rigor and the content there. And I know that's a really complex approach, but for so long we've been looking at education from a deficit, and we haven't changed the outcomes.
And I can speak to that just a little bit around, because that conversation is what we went back and forth for months on. How are we going to make sure that students are ready for Algebra 2, and they also have to meet this bridge requirement in order to graduate if they weren't successful in Algebra 1. So we talked about that, and really one more math class is what these students don't want, right? So I'm coming to school and I'm taking one more math class. Like, how do we make sure that we're making this meaningful for them? And at this point, with the graduation requirement, you know, like, we don't have another option because they need to do this, but how do we think about, like, the successes and really focusing in on the good part about Bridge this year or moving forward is that students, if they're successful in pieces, they don't have to do all of it, whereas before it was very cut and dry. So now there's some options. So if students have mastered some of the content, they won't need to go through that process. So we can differentiate more within that course to really give students what they need to prepare them for the next course.
Or the other option is Algebra 2 is not a requirement.
Right, but the bridge still would be.
Right, the bridge would be, and geometry would be. You know, but it just comes back again to is it about educating and counseling students to take the classes to appropriately prepare them for their future, if they want to go 4-year in Maryland or 2-year in Maryland, or is it about ensuring that they have a well-rounded experience where they become competent in numeric literacy when they leave? So,
Yes, and going back to something you said, you went and talked to teachers. Math teachers, and I'm wondering, and I'm sure you all do that too. I'm not in on those conversations, and I wonder if it would be helpful to, I don't want to waste anybody's time though, but I just want to throw out the idea of, for us to hear, or Teaching and Learning or somebody to talk, to hear from teachers. What are the problems when you're getting your ninth graders? What are they not coming with? Or however, and maybe going also to the high schools. I don't know, but to get some.
And beyond the teachers of Algebra 2, I think it'd be great to hear from the Calc and Stats teachers, from the Algebra 1 geometry teachers, because if I'm an Algebra 2 teacher, self-preservation, I'm going to say we need Algebra 2. So how much does that play in? But what is a really accurate picture of what the young people in our schools both need and want, and what's the capacity to make that happen within their day, within their 4 years? And also not deprive them of other really enriching life experiences, like, a quality advanced chemistry if they wanted, or, an AP biology instead of just regular, just to be bigger, better. So, any other questions on this one?
So what's the process here? Because can you just break us down through the process here? Because I'm wondering, if we do decide to keep it in, like your recommendation states, like, I think it's going to be really important for Teaching and Learning to understand, like, what the plan is to address this, so we are actually adequately addressing our needs. So I just want to understand the sequence. That would be really helpful. And I have one other point, Commissioner Hassan.
Sure. Because the recommendation is to keep the policy as is, there aren't additional steps beyond this point.
So I guess maybe
kind of spoiled the ending there a little bit.
No, I'm just kind of like, because I
advance the slide.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just take it up with you, Commissioner Hassan. Like,
Okay.
if there is still board consternation on this, and whether we should do it or not, and how do we orient people and think about a process? It really is, if we want to remove it and not agree with the recommendation,
Right.
how would we go about that? I'm not saying that's where I am, but I'd like to
Right.
understand the process if we do that.
I think it needs to be a full board conversation.
Yeah.
And especially with our new board members, where we don't know where they sit on some of these
Yeah.
pieces. But I do know that if we were comprised of our former board, there was a general idea of a need for a financial literacy course as part of the math sequence someplace. So that's what I would like to see explored more, is how that could fit in, and where that falls in order to fall effectively, to both keep them on track to complete Algebra 2, to be able to get into a Maryland school, but also to be able to stay in school and graduate. And some of those, the data, as much as we can gather on dropout related to Algebra 2 or prior to. Obviously, our freshmen, most of them who are dropping out prior to Algebra 2, are also then 16. So they're over age and under credit at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So then comes to your question about how are we back mapping this and what's going on in math and to get them ready for high school.
One more piece that I just want to add
Yep.
around the recommendation, and as we spoke to and we worked with the team for the Urban Math Leadership Network, we did a big session on this last year, also around like the criteria for students as they go into college. And right now they're doing a lot of that research, and they say within the next 5 years of having those different pathways. But at this point right now, they're still saying Algebra 2 is the course that you need. But looking into the future, not all students, if they're going to change those pathways at the community colleges and four-year colleges, then I feel like it would be up for debate, because at that point, there will be clear pathways when students get to college. But as of right now, about 80% of students are required to take college algebra, which Algebra 2 is a prerequisite, in order to move forward in a degree program.
Commissioner Bondemi, you had a question?
No, I'm just thinking right here, when you said pathway for students to get into Maryland College, you're talking about 4-year and community college,
Correct.
either one.
Yep,
either
USM
one.
system
Mhm.
schools. I think, and we can, during the board update, when I share about the policy meeting, I'll put it to the board and ask them. I think this is a decision the full board needs to discuss and weigh in on, and perhaps you could come and give a little highlight presentation, do some feedback at that point. I'll talk to Commissioner Kashani about getting us on the agenda.
And I would like to say, when you come, it would be, again, I would like to hear you repeat to the board the statistics on the pass, fail, and all the information that we already talked about, because those pieces are critical for us to understand where we are as far as.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Restate my data request, which I'm hoping it's like it literally, like, anything that we can parse out to say Algebra 2 is a, I understand what you said. I want to understand our dropout rate. Ninth grade and 10th grade, we see big dropouts. Like, let's look at those numbers. And is there any way that we can connect them to their ability? Like, how does that correlate to the classes that they're taking? Ultimately, what I'm interested in is are Algebra 2 a barrier or not? And your guys' analysis on that is going to be important.
So do you mean, is it a gateway to success or in graduating, or is that what you mean?
I guess I'm saying it from the negative side. You're taking it from the positive side. The negative side is our kids saying, oh my gosh, I can't do Algebra 2. I'm dropping out of school. Because then,
need to know both.
Yeah, we need to know, like, I want to understand the 9th and 10th grade drop and what courses are the big barriers, are the big hurdles that our kids got to get on. And it may not be Algebra 2, it may be geometry or Algebra 1.
But the state of Maryland has identified those courses at the college level.
Yeah.
So I would think we can find it. So.
Thanks.
Okay. Do you want to speak to the recommendations? Or have we covered them?
We've covered them, but we can just.
Well, maybe for the public.
Yeah, we can wrap up for the public. So, again, based off the research that we did, and also the focus group with principals and the conversations and the collaboration we had with teachers, the Office of Teaching and Learning and the academics are recommending that we keep Algebra 2 as a requirement for the areas to maintain a high level of rigor and expectation for our students, ensure that our students are meeting the 4 years of math that they need each year and the 4 credits, and also to prepare them to be ready for college. And again, as that national research changes, we would want to come back to the table and think about, the decisions that are being made as, the colleges make those decisions of how they're going to update their pathways.
All right. We threw a lot at you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. All right. We have a group who has signed up who would like to speak with us together. Renuka? What is it? Renuka and Rashad and Amanda. When you come on up, if you could introduce yourselves. And because you asked to speak as a panel but are entitled to 3 minutes apiece, we'll go with 9 minutes and have a lovely little conversation here. Be sure to push the little button, and it's green, and pull it towards you because we can't hear you.
All right, good.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rashad Hawkins. I'm the founder and director of Be More Awesome, Inc.
My name is Renuka Rege. I'm an attorney at the Public Justice Center.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda White. I'm a staff attorney with Disability Rights Maryland.
We are all with the Maryland Coalition to Reform School Discipline, a collective committed to making school discipline practices in Maryland schools fair, appropriate, and designed to keep youth in school and on track to graduate. We're here to give comment on policies JKA-RA and RB. We will start with JKA-RB, pre-K through second suspension ban policies, and we will follow up with written comments. In school year 2015 through 2016, 2,363 pre-K through second graders were suspended and expelled statewide, with 546 of those students being from Baltimore City schools. In 2016 to 2017, we as a state suspended and expelled 2,585 pre-K through second graders, with 462 being from Baltimore City schools. These numbers reflect the number of students removed and does not account for multiple removals. As you are likely aware, there are a number of issues surrounding the use of suspension and expulsion. The use of school removal is linked with negative educational and life outcomes for students, including decreased engagement with school, increased likelihood of school dropout. The use of school removal is linked with negative educational and life outcomes for students, including decreased engagement in school, increased likelihood of school dropout, and increased likelihood of contact with the criminal system. Furthermore, school removal has been disproportionately used against students of color and students with disabilities. The United States Department of Education found that black children are 3.6 times more likely to be suspended in preschool. A study from Yale University on implicit bias, led by Walter Gilliam, measured implicit bias among preschool teachers. In this study, they showed teachers video segments of preschoolers engaging in activities with the goal of identifying potential challenging behavior. While doing this, technology measured the trajectory of the teacher's gaze. What they found is that teachers look more at black children than white children, particularly African American boys. From this study, Gilliam suggests that the number is so high because teachers spend more time focusing on African American kids expecting bad behavior. So we are happy to have passed the pre-K through second grade suspension ban, but as policies are developed, which still include language that allows for suspension in certain instances, it is critical that we craft very clear language that safeguards youth from unnecessary punishment and removal and the negative collateral consequences that result from those punishments and removals.
Thanks, Rashad. So, as we mentioned, we're part of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline, and we worked on the legislation banning the suspension and expulsion for pre-K through second grade students and lobbied for its passage as we believe it will improve outcomes for our youngest learners. And we're also participating in MSD's work group to draft regulations and state guidance. So we commend city schools for being proactive in drafting policies to implement this new law. And we have been part of the conversations as they drafted these policies and provided feedback, some of which was included in this draft before you. But we just wanted to mention a few additional concerns and suggestions for how the policy can be strengthened. We have 5 main concerns, and as we said, we'll follow up with written comments once we have a chance for all of us to go through it in more detail, since the drafts were just posted recently. But some of these primary concerns are I know that we had a whole discussion about the 90-minute period, but removal for when a mental health provider consultation has been requested should be more clearly defined. And so we mentioned the 90-minute period, but that's actually only in the guidance manual, and it's not in the draft regulation or policy, which is actually the law that governs. So currently, as the policies are written, a student can be waiting indefinitely for the mental health consultation, and that's problematic if that does happen. There also should be clear language regarding what exactly the mental health provider is doing and how they arrived at their decision. So we would suggest having the mental health professional document the consultation, including the rationale, the factual basis for the recommendation, and if there is a determination that the student poses an imminent threat of serious harm, there should be documentation of what interventions were tried before that and why they would not reduce or eliminate the threat of harm. And then it also should be clear where those records of that consultation will be kept and who would have access to those records, because those could be pretty sensitive health records for students. We recommend that the policy should include an appeals process for parents and guardians who don't agree with the suspension decision. Currently, there's no appeals process for suspensions that are less than 10 days, including for pre-K through second grade. And then finally, the policy should clarify some things that some unintended consequences that could happen in place of suspensions now that we're trying to reduce the suspensions. For example, some of these are calls to school police or overusing emergency petitions when, as an intervention, when the situation really doesn't warrant it and there's not a legitimate reason to do so.
So now I also wanted to talk with you about the other revision that was before you with the JKA-RB around restraint and seclusion. And so I first want to commend city schools on taking this move to remove seclusion. Disability Rights Maryland and the Coalition to Reform School Discipline are certainly in favor of this move. We think that it's aligned with best practices, and so we're very excited to see this movement from city schools. We did have a couple recommendations for their consideration, though, and I had 3 kind of recommendations for you all to consider. The first is where we are actually including this policy around restraint, seclusion, and exclusion. Currently, it's being held under the discipline policies, but we really feel like this is sending the wrong message, because these are not interventions that should be seen as punitive. I mean, this is really something that should be happening, for example, like with the clients that I represent who have a disability, who may have escalating behavior, emotional disabilities, children on the spectrum, and in very kind of emergency circumstances, very rare circumstances that restraint should be utilized. and even exclusion certainly as well. And so the concern is the message that we're sending by including these underneath our discipline policies is really not consistent with what the intent is of these interventions. So we would ask that it be considered that they be a standalone policy outside of the discipline policy. The other piece that we wanted to bring to your attention is that under Section 4 of this policy of guidelines for disruptive behavior, it spells out a policy that is a referral to the student support team. However, we're concerned that the way that it's currently worded, it's not clear that under federal law, our special education law, IDEA, essentially this referral to the student support team is like a response to intervention, this RTI process, and that cannot be a barrier to students being identified. So certainly it can be a process that can be utilized, but the language needs to clarify that it cannot be mandated that students must go through a student support team before that they can go to an IEP team for a referral. So what should happen is that if the school team has any concerns or suspects there is a disability, certainly they should be making that referral to the IEP team. So we'd like to see some language that really clarifies that for our schools. And then finally, just to make you all aware, there was a bill that passed that created a task force on restraint and seclusion. And so that task force has concluded, and they have a number of recommendations that they have submitted to the state. And it's my understanding at this process, the state board recently approved the draft regulations. So those regulations are going to be in the Maryland Register soon. And I know that the way that we've currently drafted is based off of the current language, but that's going to be changing soon. So there's some real substantive changes that I just want to make sure that you all are aware of. So we'd have to come back to the table to revise these. That's all that we have today. We certainly would love to answer any of your questions if you have some, and we will be following up with our written comments as well.
Yes, I got lost, so help me with this. Sure. When you talked about the student support team and the IEP team, can you just repeat what you were saying there?
So the concern is that there's a process in place where we see that students who are not academically performing or who are having behavioral issues can be referred to these student support teams. And that's essentially Baltimore City's way of doing what's called response to intervention, and RTI. And what specifically has come down from the federal government and from guidance from the federal government Department of Education is that you can't mandate that students have to go through that RTI process before they make a referral. And what we're concerned about is the way that the language is written right now. It seems that it's mandating that, and that's not consistent with the federal law.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate you all coming out and giving us feedback. This is excellent. I agree. I just want to make sure you also submit this in writing. Okay, you already have. Okay, wonderful. Because I like the idea of part of the regulation of the documenting the rationale, what interventions have been put in place. We should grapple whether we have an appeals process if we don't agree with the decision that was made by the mental health professional. So I followed all that, and I thought that was really, really excellent feedback. What I didn't understand was there is a 90-minute consultation that we talked about quite a bit in the meeting. What is do you have a recommendation of how we can improve that or clarify? It's vague.
So actually we think that it is a good idea to have a 90-minute limit on or a 90-minute limit on how long the consultation should take. But currently that 90-minute limit is only present in a guidance manual that City Schools has drafted. It's not, the language of the 90-minute limit is not actually in the policy or regulation.
We should put in the regulation, is your point.
Right,
okay.
Right. Because then it would have the force of law, whereas the guidance manual is just a guidance.
It's 90 minutes to begin the consultation. They have that window, right?
They have that window to, in a school where there is a mental health professional, they have that 90-minute window to travel from the central office.
Right. So you're recommending, okay, I didn't totally get, move it from the guidance manual to a part of the regulation. That's where it would go, right, Commissioner Hassan? Okay.
And I wasn't here for that portion of the discussion, but one of my comments was that we needed to tighten up the due process around just the soup to nuts, including the SST, and whether it's mandated, encouraged, used to document, and making sure we're really clear on that.
And just to let you all know, we did participate in the process in terms of both the guidance manual, and we gave written comments to city schools about the guidance manual, which I think does start to incorporate some of these kind of procedural questions that we really feel like should be in the policy. So I hope you have an opportunity to review that. And just to give, again, to echo our kudos to Baltimore City, we are representing, our coalition has been on that MSD work group, and we've certainly held up Baltimore City as being a potential model policy for their guidance document. I mean, we really commend city schools for being so proactive about this, but we still think that there's ways to strengthen the language, but I mean, the bones are there, definitely.
Excellent, thank you. Commissioner Benzema?
No, I'm good.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your support, your engagement, and being here. Our next policy meeting, AJ. Well, Tanisha's finding that. Just an update to the public who may be listening that we do have the school police policy forum tomorrow evening, which is a time for the full board to hear from the community about their understandings and needs around the school police policy. However, if city schools are closed, the policy on board meetings is that board meetings follow the school. So if the schools are not open, we do not have the meetings. So watch the news. If Baltimore City schools are closed tomorrow for weather, if the district is closed for weather, then we will be rescheduling the school police policy forum. Otherwise, it is in this room at 6 o'clock, Allison?
Yeah.
Yes. 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And
Can you just, Commissioner Hassan, can you clarify what happens if you have school, but they cancel after school activities? That still would
that
be
would still
canceled.
reschedule, yep.
Okay.
Yep. If it's a 2-hour delay, we're here. If it is canceled at all day or in the afternoon, then we are not here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And Tanisha, next meeting?
February the 20th?
February the 20th, 3:30 in this room. Do you have the agenda? Quick.
Yes.
So,
Equity was postponed.
equity was postponed and hopefully will be rescheduled.
And school police policy.
And school police policy. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And we are officially adjourned at 5:14 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you.